But we begin tonight with manufacturing consent, a concept introduced by Edward S. Herman and Noam Chomsky in their 1988 book on the political economy of the mass media. Here's a clip from the 1992 documentary of the same name.
But when the state loses the bludgeon, when you can't control people by force, and when the voice of the people
So after Donald Trump finished up his scam at a black church in Detroit where the crowd looked like this, he headlined an event in the city run by Charlie Kirk, a MAGA operative who is anti-Martin Luther King Jr., says MLK should not be celebrated, and who said he gets nervous if he finds out his pilot is black.
I'm sorry, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified.
And right before Trump showed up to that Charlie Kirk event, this is what was happening on that same stage.
But we begin tonight with manufacturing consent, a concept introduced by Edward S. Herman and Noam Chomsky in their 1988 book on the political economy of the mass media. Here's a clip from the 1992 documentary of the same name.
But when the state loses the bludgeon, when you can't control people by force, and when the voice of the people can be heard, you have this problem. It may make people so curious and so arrogant that they don't have the humility to submit to a civil rule, and therefore you have to control what people think.
In short, it is the job of the media, our job, to not just tell you what happened, but to give you some context around what happened in a way that informs you and helps you make decisions in your busy life. But too often, what the media actually does is create a mass consensus around the preferences of the financial and moneyed elite to subtly make their preferences your preferences. This is especially true in selling wars and sometimes elections. In the November election to come, which, let's just be honest, could be our last free and fair election due to the machinations of a certain political religious cult, the wealthiest Americans have a clear preference for the outcome: Donald Trump reinstalled as president. Mother Jones recently reported the following in an article about America's top donors heavily favoring Trump and the Republicans, which reflects something we've long known about rich conservatives: their disdain for taxation. Mother Jones reports that Donald Trump may have lost in the Manhattan court, where a jury convicted him of all 34 felony charges of falsifying business records. But, quote, there's one place he and his party appear to be winning: in the race to snag major cash from the richest families in America. For all of Trump's supposed grassroots appeal, as of May 1st, less than 1/3 of contributions to his campaign committee for the 2024 election cycle had come from grassroots donors. That means people giving less than $200. According to Open Secrets, large contributors accounted for 69% of Trump's $121 million total, whereas President Biden's campaign committee, which took in $195 million, got 54% from large donors. More broadly, the lion's share of confirmed contributions from the biggest political givers, the top 100 families, have flowed to Republican candidates and groups. Then there's something called hard money. This is the money contributed directly to a specific candidate, and these are donations that the federal government caps. In the hard money category, Mother Jones reports that Republicans took in 27% more from the top 100 families than Democrats did. In dollar terms, that's about $86 million for the Republicans versus about $68 million for the Democrats. But if you include soft money, The unlimited donations that the Supreme Court made possible through their Citizens United ruling during and maybe in response to President Obama getting elected by a 10 million vote margin. It's not even close. Quoting Mother Jones again, Republicans raked in a whopping $508 million from the top 100, triple the Democrats' $169 million take. It's a lot of numbers and data, but it may leave you wondering, why would America's wealthiest families continue pouring money into a political party that has stripped itself of its dignity to fashion itself into a religious cult centered around a 78-year-old 37-count felon and adjudicated sexual abuser? Well, Michael Mechanic of Mother Jones, who authored the piece that I'm quoting from, has a pretty good guess. Biden and the Dems have spooked America's richest with their multiple and largely unsuccessful efforts to close abusive loopholes and raise taxes on corporations and the upper crust. That includes efforts to tax the unrealized gains of the mega rich. The paper profits on appreciated investments that are currently only taxed when the assets are sold. In the meantime, Trump and the Republicans are fighting to extend their unpopular and ultimately disappointing 2017 tax cuts, a move the Congressional Budget Office calculates will cost the U.S. government $3.5 trillion with a T over 10 years. So what does that have to do with manufacturing consent? Well, it probably wouldn't go over too well if you, gentle viewer, understood that setting Trump up as an autocrat is merely the price that the super rich are willing to make you pay just to stuff more tax cut cash into their already deep pockets. Much better to make you believe that the people who really want Trump back in charge are closer to home. Which brings me to Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all the great dads out there. Now, if you're a practicing Christian, a lot of you saints may have spent at least part of yesterday in church, celebrating your dads and, of course, the Heavenly Father. And in America, that tends to be a, shall we say, highly segregated experience. No one seems to know who originated the quote, but it's been repeated by everyone from James Baldwin, who said he was quoting Malcolm X, to Dr. King, that the most segregated hour in American life is 11 a.m. on a Sunday. It's just a factual legacy of this nation's history with race and religion that there are predominantly white churches and there are Black churches. But what do you think of when you think of a Black church? Probably something like this. Just such as these. But what you probably don't think of is this.
What a nice welcome. Thank you.
That is the reaction to Donald Trump at what nearly every major media outlet reported was his visit to a Black church in Detroit, Michigan, one of the 10 blackest cities in America, with a population that's about 78% African American and a poverty rate topping 33%. In other words, it would be hard not to fill a Detroit church with Black people. So now I want you to look with your eyes. Just look with your eyes again at this crowd. Is what you're seeing here what you would write in a headline is a Black church? And yet, here was the headline in the New York Times: Trump, in pitch to Black voters in Detroit, cast Biden as anti-Black. And the Washington Post: Trump portrays rampant crime in speech at Black church in Detroit. In the Associated Press: Trump blasts immigrants for taking jobs as he courts voters at a Black church MAGA event in Detroit. The Detroit Free Press even ran a photo series online with the headline, Trump visits Detroit church to woo Black voters. But what they somehow forgot to show was how overwhelmingly white that crowd was, and also how many empty seats there were in that sanctuary. In fact, if you looked at the carefully selected images in their online story, you would probably guess the crowd inside that sanctuary was overwhelmingly Black and pro-Trump, literally cheering for him and chanting his name. And you would be forgiven for believing that this reinforces what seems to be the new hot narrative, that it is Black people, specifically Black men, who are driving Trump back into the White House with their overwhelming and historically growing support. When the actual reality that you can see with your own eyes and know if you peel back the layers just a little bit is that Trump spoke to an overwhelmingly white crowd inside a large Detroit church that, yes, does indeed have a Black pastor, but which merely served as a venue. And that the people who participated in the roundtable, like those in the audience at that church, were already Trump supporters, not some new historic Black supporters of Trump. Trump was in Detroit to participate in something called the People's Convention, a weekend-long gathering arranged by Turning Point Action, a conservative grassroots group founded by activist Charlie Kirk. It would have been easy enough to ask some of the attendees at that roundtable if they came to that church from the convention. And while several of these stories note that Trump harped on crime as part of his presentation, doesn't it seem kind of ironic and pretty relevant that the guy saying that just recently got convicted of 34 felony counts in New York? I mean, Trump raised the crime rate in Detroit just by being there. And one of his new friends at that event, Kilpatrick, Detroit's former mayor, is just 4 years out of prison himself, where he was sentenced to 28 years for his role in a wide-ranging racketeering conspiracy that included fraud, extortion, and tax crimes. Kilpatrick extorted city vendors, rigged bids, and took kickbacks and bribes. He used funds from nonprofit civic organizations to line his pockets and those of his family, steering millions of dollars to himself and his friends as Detroit plunged deeper into poverty. Kilpatrick was released because Trump commuted his sentence in 2020. So, of course, now he's endorsed him. But it's weird, right? How many of the black men endorsing Trump are formerly prominent and famous black men who have criminal records? Not like the criminal records this country has racked up for black men through things like the war on drugs. Nope. For crimes they committed after they were prominent and or rich. Kind of like Donald Trump. Also on hand as part of Trump's Blacks for Trump coalition, Black Republican Congressman John James, who represents an overwhelmingly white, affluent district in Macomb and Sterling Heights, Michigan, meaning not that district, whose congresswoman is Rashida Tlaib. Also, Detroit native and former Trump HUD Secretary Dr. Ben Carson, who hasn't lived in Detroit since he was a child, and more recently has lived in mansions in places like Virginia and Florida. The ever-present Trump apologist Byron Donalds, whose majority white district is also in Florida, and a claque of local Detroit rappers who, apologies, I confess, I've never heard of. The church where Trump held this town hall is called 180 Church. The pastor, Lorenzo Sewell, is a Detroit native who grew up in an abusive home, with his father going to prison when he was a teenager. His experience with the criminal justice system did not happen when he was already rich and famous. He became a drug dealer and gang member as a troubled kid, the way it tragically happens for so many Americans in communities with high rates of poverty. But he had a conversion experience his senior year in high school in 1999, according to his church bio, and later became a pastor. Here he is, claiming Biden and Obama never visited the hood.
President Trump, I'm so humbled that you would be here. President Obama never came to the hood, so to speak, right? President Joe Biden, he went to the big NAACP dinner, but he never came to the hood. So thank you.
This is the part where I point out that President Obama came to Michigan 15 times as president, including Detroit. Pastor Sewell also claimed it's hard to find a black barber in Detroit for his Blasian kids, which honestly was weird. And in an interview on Fox after the roundtable, he quoted something you've probably never heard of called the Platinum Plan, a black wealth plan he claimed Donald Trump created, but which actually was the idea of rapper Ice Cube. So not a Trump plan at all. And I'll add this. It is ironic that Trump is attempting to court black voters in Detroit just 4 years after lying about black voters in Detroit and claiming their votes were inherently fraudulent. Michigan was one of the states whose votes Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and their little cabal tried to steal in their insurrection. The Attorney General in Michigan has charged 16 people with felonies for trying to steal the votes of black Michiganders from Detroit. So in making his pitch, I wonder if Donald reminded his new friends that he doesn't think their votes in a city where he won only about 5% of the votes should have counted the last time. Which brings me back to the question of manufacturing consent. We know based on the actual data, donations, the endorsements, and open statements of billionaires that it is the super rich and also Christian nationalists who want Trump back in power, not poor folks or black Americans. So why is all this energy being expended to try to pin a potential Trump return on these groups instead of on his real base? Because Trump has a big lie about black people too. And just like all of his lies, it aims to jeopardize democracy by making you think that he did more for black people than any president but Abraham Lincoln. But we will unpack these lies.
Well, welcome to the Joy Ann Reid Show, also known as Let It Be Known, or better known as Let It Be. To go along with that, so we've always heard this Blacks for Trump movement. And do you know who the co-chairs are for Blacks for Trump? Just out of curiosity, do you know who the co-chairs are for Blacks for Trump? Two white women, Diane Black and Marsha Blackburn. That is the only thing black about them, is that word black is in both their last names. Diane Black, Marsha Blackburn. You can't make this stuff up. So yeah, it is all, as Dr. Nicole wrote in, smoke and mirrors. It is also um, what Joy shows constantly, what we try to bring you constantly, is that you are being duped again. You're being hoodwinked again. And they are rolling out the men in blackface. Notice, notice, we don't even hear much from Candace Owens anymore. It's the men, it's the black men, it's the men in blackface, as I like to call them, like that so-called pastor or whatever you want to call him, Sewell, who come out. Obama's never been to the hood. I mean, there's a lot of criticisms you can make of Barack Obama, but that ain't one. That ain't one. Um, Biden's never been to the hood. Biden has spent a lot of time in black neighborhoods, whether you like him or not. No matter what, and that is not just during his presidency. That's not just during his vice presidency. It's during his upbringing. Biden is almost like an Elvis Presley type, and that Elvis grew up in a black projects. Not that Biden grew up in the black projects, but he grew up around a lot of black folks. Don't give him a black card. Don't give him the right to say what so many seem to be holding against him, that he said in 2020, if you ain't black if you don't vote for me. Um, you only the crazies and those looking for something negative held that against him and didn't try to understand his meaning. Because his meaning is even, if he said it today, obviously his campaign will not allow him to say it. But if he said it today, and if you gave it some thought, despite those in blackface like Ben Carson, like that pastor, like Ice Cube, like Jay-Z, like Snoop Dogg, and despite those perpetrating blackness, um, black folks are in extreme, extreme, unprecedented trouble if that man gets in office. So, thus, he can say what he said in 2020. And if you stop listening to, and Joy broke it down why you shouldn't listen to the New York Times and AP and all those. She broke it down because not one of them, as she said so eloquently, as she always does, not one of them showed you or told you the truth about that so-called visit to a black church. They rented it out. And the churches, whether they black or white, churches will sell their souls for a buck. The pastors, most of them. I don't care who your pastor is, and yeah, many are gonna get offended. But offer them a buck, and you can have the run of the place. And that's what Trump did. And these news outlets, these mainstream outlets, did not tell you. Just like a couple of months ago in South Carolina, when this so-called black conservatives for Trump, the only blackface pretty much was Byron Butter Biscuits Donalds. That was it. They showed you the stage. But then when footage leaked of the audience, it was MAGA galore. Some of them didn't even bother to take off their figurative Ku Klux Klan hats. And that's right, Power 96. That's exactly what Biden meant. He meant you ain't black if you don't vote for Biden over Trump. And Austin said there's a lot of dumb black preachers in America. Listen, I try not to get into criticizing other people's beliefs and religions and stuff, but I mean, because we all are imperfect. But my gosh, the things that a dollar will buy you, see, it takes a whole lot more than a few bucks to buy my soul. I mean, my gosh, they have, and I don't think I just don't think there's enough money to buy my blackness. I mean, give me a break. Unbelievable. And Joy also mentioned that um, the wealthy and Power 96 continues to tell us that he doesn't use banks. He puts his money under his mattress or wherever he puts it. And he continues to show how astute that is. Because listen to this. One of those Instagrams that Greer sends me. More than a year after the downfall of Silicon Valley Bank, higher interest rates are still putting pressure on the U.S. banking system. And according to the FDIC, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporations, their first quarter report, the U.S. banking system is sitting on a collective $517 billion in unrealized losses and has 63, quote, problem banks. According to Business Insider, those losses have been sparked primarily by a surge in interest rates over the past 2 years, which have driven down the price of fixed income securities held by these banks. Unrealized losses held by banks increased by $39 billion in the first quarter relative to the fourth quarter of 2023. And mortgage rates have been on the rise since the start of the year, with the 30-year fixed rate rising from about 6.6% in early January to over 7% now. And remember, from 2008 through 2021, the U.S. banking system's unrealized losses and gains on investment securities range from as much as $75 billion in losses to just under $150 billion in gains. So these 63 problem banks in the first quarter, they represent an increase of 11 banks from the fourth quarter of last year. So these problem banks continue to uh, be just that, a problem. Total assets held by the 63 problem banks in the first quarter was $82 billion, suggesting that most of the problem banks are smaller in size. Daniela Pierre says Wells Fargo could account for all 63. There's another problem that's going. So, you remember, most of you will say this, like, you remember when, and like when food tasted good and things were different. Microplastics, microplastics. That's something. Here's something else that Greer sent me. That it's a bit on the alarming side. Microplastics pollution has been found in all human semen samples tested in a study, and researchers are saying that further research on the potential harm to reproduction is imperative. Sperm counts in men have been falling for decades, and 40% of low counts remain unexplained, although chemical pollution has been implicated by many studies. Out of 40 semen samples from healthy men undergoing premarital health assessments in China, this was one study, and then another study found microplastics in the semen of 6 out of 10 healthy young men in Italy. And another China-based study found the pollutants in half of 25 samples. Recent studies in mice have reported that microplastics reduce sperm count and cause abnormalities in hormone disruption. There are several ways now to reduce your exposure through food, including by avoiding highly processed meals. One study of 16 protein types found that while each contained microplastics, highly processed products like chicken nuggets contain the most per gram of meat. The researchers said that could be because highly processed foods have more contact with plastic food production equipment. While plastic packaging extends shelf life and acts as a barrier to contamination, folks, it can also generate small amounts of microplastics that may be shed into your food. Also, swapping out plastic cutting boards with wooden ones could also reduce your exposure. Heat, including from dishwashers and microwaves, can also cause plastic products to break down. They also warn about how you warm up your baby's bottles. Some of that allows for the microplastics to get into the bottle somehow. Researchers suggested that the hot water you use, even to put your tea, might release particles from plastic tea bags. Experts recommend using paper tea bags or loose leaf tea bags instead. Water treatment plants can get rid of some, but not all of the microplastics in tap water. Also, microplastic levels are typically higher in bottled water than in tap water. So we try to drink the bottled water because it's supposed to be better for you. Well, no. And I can tell you, if you ever been to Aruba, I bet they don't have that problem. Their tap water is absolutely just to die for. The only thing I drank when I was in Aruba other than scotch was water. Nothing else. No juice, no sodas, just water. Water was go to the restaurant and say, you want can we get you some Evian? Can we get you some? No, get me some tap water, please. The water was so good. It's so good. But this contamination might partly result from the bottling process, the plastic bottles themselves, and even opening and closing the cap. So, something else to be concerned about. This is all of the processed stuff today. I was in New York not a month or so ago, whenever, and as a New Yorker, one of your favorite things has been White Castle, and that used to be just those little burgers. So there was some when it was 8th Avenue and around I want to say around 40th Street. And it was near Madison Square Garden. So I went, I said, let me get me 4 cheeseburgers and whatever. You always get 4. At least you gotta get 4. Sometimes you get 6, depends on who you are, but you gotta get 4. I took a bite out of the first one and threw the rest away. It was disgusting. Nothing is like it used to. I'm sure that had all the stuff, took all my sperm count away. I don't have to worry anymore. I mean, I've made enough kids in my life. So, I mean, I'm not Nick Cannon and it's not multiple women. Shucks. Shucks. Nick is out there. He don't care about no microplastics. Nick's out there talking about baby number 40. So, oh gosh. A white man was charged with a hate crime after he allegedly punched a black 6th grade boy in Bellingham, Washington, while the student was on a field trip. This guy just randomly, he saw the black student, he saw the students, one black, walked across the street, and Mike B says Stacy and his old wasteful self. Um, hey, I did not waste any of my sperm. Obviously, I didn't. Oh boy, we better get off that. This Paul Jonathan Bittner was arrested and taken into county jail on charges of assault of a child in the 2nd degree and malicious harassment, a hate crime offense in Washington. His bail was set at $500,000, and the unnamed 11-year-old who he attacked suffered a chipped tooth. Students were walking to the Pickford Film Center on a field trip when a, quote, community member physically assaulted and used racist comments towards one of our students, the middle school principal, Michelle Durag, said in a statement. While these students were walking on the sidewalk, Bittner, the unavowed racist, crossed the street, approached the child, and without any warning, pushed him. Then made a comment along the lines of, quote, "Are you gonna talk to a white man like that?" The 42-year-old then punched the student. Boy, oh boy, just let the let the father and the uncles and the cousins. That should be the sentence. That should be the sentence. Let the father, the uncles, the cousins, let them just 15 minutes in the room. Lock the door. Um, School officials said they were mortified by the attack, including the racist nature of the attack. And the C Power 96 says, I would like to be in the jail cell with him. Yeah, it's just again, so all of this, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this before we conclude today, but all of this again in 2016, not that it wasn't happening before 2016. We're not getting it twisted. But in 2016, this orange-headed bigot came out and started empowering, and he was helped by CNN, MSNBC, ABC, certainly Fox. He was aided and abetted by them. They kept giving him, platforming him, and platforming him, and he made it chic for racists to become as overt as they were during Jim Crow. And he's now even saying, as he rents out a black church and fills it with white folks, and the media, mainstream media, tells you that it makes you believe that it's black folks in the church. But he's now telling in his manifesto and spoken, he said it. He's been saying this, that white folks suffer from more racism than anyone, and he aims to change that. Now, this is his words. We criticized, and Dr. Nicole kind of she sent me some text yesterday. Oh, you don't want to go too hard on Biden because we certainly don't want Trump. And while that may be true, we have to um, call people out. And with Trump, we have to, as the black press and mainstream media should be doing it, but they are protecting their so many of them in mainstream, the leaders, the owners, they're the ones in that big wealth, among those wealthy that are with the dark money. So it's their interest. It's in their interest because they, as Joy Reid pointed out, you know, they don't. Trump is making sure that they don't pay taxes. Who wants to pay taxes? Um, yes, Power 96, all mainstream media outlets embrace Donald Trump, and they are responsible for his 21st century Jim Crow political career. But this Trump has emboldened folks, even those who may not, if you can term someone as not yet full blown racist. And so now it's like you got that idiot white girl on the on Twitter who is going after black people, trying to bait black people, using the N word and disparaging black women, et cetera, and then claims that she got a job with a conservative media outlet after she got fired from her job because of her social media posts or whatever, which no one has been able to yet verify that she got hired anywhere. Um, but those who would not ordinarily, the ones I'm talking about, the ones you might go to school with or work with, and they got that little that Trump in them. that Trump thought in him, and they just don't want to say it. That they kind of hold back a little bit. And he's emboldened them now to say, the heck with it. We winning. We winning. Racism. And black folks, black men in particular, they don't, these black-faced men don't help. I mentioned the other day about Malcolm Jamal Warner and how he, says he loves J. Cole, but he can't listen to J. Cole because it's too many M words and too many B words, and now all of a sudden, I don't know J. Cole songs. I know my kids, my son is a big J. Cole. I think my oldest daughter, is J. Cole fan as well. But I don't know what he makes. I listen. I'm still stuck in the good music era. So and they get on me about that. I mean, what it is, what it is. But nonetheless, Trump has empowered all these folks. And so you get cases where this man can go see a middle school student, 11 years old, and go push him and punch him. Feel like there's not going to be any retribution. And at the end of the day, who knows? Who knows? Um, in Maryland, Governor Wes Moore yesterday signed an executive order pardoning more than 175,000 marijuana convictions. Huge day in Maryland as we get set to kick off the NMPA's national convention in Baltimore. We'll be, Greer and I will be at City Hall today with the mayor. He should be giving us the key to the city, but that's not on the agenda. We'll see. Maybe he'll surprise us. But Governor Moore signed the executive order in Annapolis with State Attorney General Anthony Brown in attendance. An estimated 100,000 individuals will be directly affected by the pardons, according to the governor's office. The pardons include more than 150,000 misdemeanor convictions for simple possession of cannabis and more than 18,000 misdemeanor convictions for use or possession with intent to use drug paraphernalia. The pardons reflect the number of convictions, with some individuals having more than one conviction pardon through the executive order. The executive order makes Maryland the first state in the U.S. to issue mass pardons on cannabis paraphernalia-related convictions. We know Maryland legalized recreational marijuana last year after the passage of a constitutional amendment during the state's 2022 legislative session. David Youngblood says, thank God for Governor Moore leading the way. Governor Moore, one of the more powerful scenes, political wise, that we've seen, at least in my view, in a long time, was after that Key Bridge collapse. Governor Moore and Mayor Brandon Scott together at the pier in what appeared to be heavy thought and heavy conversation, just the two of them. And that photo still resonates in my mind. And speaking, we're going to spend just a few more minutes on the twice impeached, 4 times indicted, 34 times convicted felon, business fraud, twice jury found him responsible for sexual assault. Man that said he can grab a woman by his private parts and get away with it. Man who said he can shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. The man who has caused so much divisiveness. Perhaps he is among those in American history who will go down as among those who have caused the most divisiveness in the history of this country. Former Republican National Committee Chair Michael Steele went after him when Trump said in his statement that he is not racist because he has so many black friends. That's that old saying, right? Oh, I got black friends. That's when how can you tell a racist when they start saying, oh, I got black friends? Michael Steele says someone can be racist and still have black friends, though it says something about the relationship. Just roll out the black friends. Byron, Butter Biscuits, Donald's, old Buckwheat right there, Tim Scott, what they call a mushmouth. Ben over Carson. I mean, we can go on and on. Melted Cube as an ice cube. I mean, come on. We can go on and on about those who can't wait for the massa to throw the uneaten chitlins off under the table so they can go crawling for it. Got some hot sauce there, boss. Michael Steele says, I think we should take this as it is, and it is more what he says BS from the man who argued for and will argue to this day for the execution of 5 innocent young black men. See, Michael Steele gets it. And so here, and the thing about Michael Steele is he considers himself conservative. He's a Republican, and he has not renounced being a Republican. He just doesn't support this Republican Party. And he referenced Trump's disparaging remarks about the countries in Africa, and his comments that there were, quote, very fine people on both sides at the 2016 white nationalist rally in Charlottesville. Michael Steele said, quote, spare me the Donald Trump has black friends BS. It's Sunday morning, he said, and I don't want to have to go to church twice. Oh gosh. Michael Steele he came ready. Deval Patrick Mike V says. That's when Trump had pushed back last week on allegations. He says, I have so many black friends that if I were a racist, they wouldn't be friends. They would know better than anybody and fast. They would not be with me for 2 minutes if they thought I was racist, and I'm not racist. I am not a crook. Unbelievable. And so here's the other part to remember when you're as you consider the future with this guy. Yeah, Michelle says I have a lot of respect for Michael Steele. Power 96 says I was a big supporter of Q until he started driving Tucker Carlson around like he was driving Mr. Charlie, and he probably said Mr. Tucker, Mr. Tucker. But here's something else to remember now. Oh gosh, she's showing Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker don't know top from bottom, left from right, et cetera, et cetera. We can go on and on with him. He's been in that huddle too long, with Trump standing directly behind him. Having already, as we said, been convicted of 34 felony charges and facing about 60 other felonies. Trump's extreme and violent rhetoric and the retribution that he will seek if re-elected has been laid bare again by 2 former senior aides who revealed that Trump discussed executing Americans, including his own staff, for disobedience. And remember, we've been saying this, but Joy said it in her segment. This idea of if he gets in, there may never be another election. But pay attention. Stop listening to the rhetoric, the social media commentary. Social media. If I wasn't working in media, if I was just at a regular desk job, or I would not engage social media at all. The only reason I engage it is because we use it to push our news articles, our program, et cetera, et cetera. But especially that dumpster fire called X, formerly known as Twitter. I mean, it is it's really that's the ghetto. That's the ghetto. It's smut everywhere. It's misinformation, disinformation, lies everywhere. In fact, the Surgeon General yesterday said, just as as you see on packages of cigarettes, that warning, the Surgeon General has determined smoking to be deadly to your health. The Surgeon General said yesterday that there should be a label on. He'd like to put a label on social media, Twitter, and the rest, saying, "Warning: this is dangerous to your mental health." It is. It is just uh, the things we have to do today to make a living. But anyway, with Trump declaring that he'll be a dictator on day one, the revelations that his former top aides have unveiled is troubling to say the least. Alyssa Farah Griffin, Trump's former communication director, confirmed in an interview that Trump had explicitly talked about executing staff members who leaked stories about him. She corroborated an account by former Attorney General Bill Barr about Trump's alarming reactions. She says Caitlin Collins at CNN interviewed Bill Barr and asked about an anecdote I had shared about a meeting he and I were both in the Oval Office, where Trump straight up said a staffer who leaked the story should be executed. Griffith said, and Bill Barr kind of danced around it and said, I don't recall that specific instance, but there were others where he talked about executing people. He says, how do you rationalize that that is a person fit in sound judgment to be president of the United States? Griffin resigned from Trump's world just a couple of days before the January 6th insurrection. And she also, if you recall, demanded that Trump resign at that time. She noted that Trump made such statements in front of a dozen other people. And so Bill Barr, while he didn't specifically or explicitly confirm the incident, he did not dispute the possibility. He said that I remember him being very mad. I actually don't remember him saying executing, but I wouldn't dispute it. Trump, of course, has praised the rioters who went into the Capitol, calling them warriors and hostages. And he's also warned of a quote, his words, bloodbath if he loses the 2024 election. He has also suggested the execution of Joint Chiefs Chairman, General Mark Miley. And you remember when he was running in 2016, he encouraged his supporters to, quote, knock the crap out of Black Lives Matters protesters or Black protesters at the time. And he even promised that if you did so, I will pay your legal bills. I will help defend you in court. And we know with the Charlottesville racist thing, he says there's blame on both sides. He praised neo-Nazis. And one guy, a Republican who attacked a reporter covering the event, Trump said, any guy that can do a body slam, he is my type. And remember, of course, he told the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by. And he told the Capitol rioters that you'll never take back our country with weakness. If you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. He's also suggested strongly that if he loses his court cases, he's said his supporters will violently attack people. So this is the guy. I mean, we can go on and on and on. One former top advisor um, called him very dangerous and unhinged. So that's where that lies. So this is information um, folks need to pay attention to. You have to pay attention to what somebody's telling you about themselves. Forget about what mainstream media says. Listen to the man himself. All of this stuff that we've reported, certainly, and all the stuff that Joy-Ann Reid has reported. And the thing with Joy is going all in, and she's always gone on in because she also understands. This is the point I was trying to make yesterday about Biden and not attending um, the Black Press's convention this week. Um, you know, the point with Biden is that folks of his ilk, wealthy, older white men, they have really not a whole lot, especially compared to everybody else, Black and Latinos. They don't have anything to lose. If he loses, he loses, goes off in the sunset. If he wins, then it's Jim Crow or worse. And Joy-Ann Reid, she goes in because she understands that everything's on the line, even for someone like herself. I mean, I'm sure MSNBC pays her very well, but she's not by no means a multimillionaire who may or may not have the means to pick up and go to, say, another country, wherever that might be, as some have said they will do. Some did in 2016. So yeah, everybody can get it under Trump. And so the other part is, as he said, as we've said here, he's talking about executions, and that is for those who are not loyal to him. And he's definitely, yes, as Greer is sending me the note, he's made that clear. He's coming hard after journalists, all press freedoms. This will be like, when you wait for news out of, say, Russia or Iran, it's state media, state-run media, state-controlled media. And that is the only media you will get. There will be no free press. And he tried to establish that in his first term. And some of you may have overlooked that. We didn't as journalists. It seems like mainstream that's where this white privilege stuff comes into play. Because see, they feel like, okay, they can change their stripes no matter what type of shucking and jiving and Bojangles dancing and butter biscuit eating that Ben Carson and Ice Cube and Jay-Z and Snoop and Stephen A and Byron Donalds and them do. They can't change their color. They can't blend in. White folks go back to being white folks. We will be who we are. So get that straight. 4 years after this is a fun story. 4 years after a racist encounter with a Karen, Christian Cooper has earned the ultimate payback. Do you remember who Christian Cooper is? Well, he just won a Daytime Emmy Award for his passionate love of bird watching. If you might recall the racial incident that took place in 2020 in Central Park, it not only spotlighted systemic racial issues at the time, but also paved the way for Cooper's extraordinary success. It was a sunny day when Cooper, who is an avid bird watcher, black man, found himself in the Ramble, which is a secluded area of Central Park known for its rich bird population. As he enjoyed the tranquility of the natural habitat, he noticed a dog running off leash, which violates park rules because it's designed to protect the birds. Well, he was concerned, so he approached the dog's owner, a woman, no relation, of course, a white woman named Amy Cooper. He just simply requested that she put a dog on a leash. Well, what followed was a disturbing display of racial bias. Amy went all Karen and threatened to call the police and make a false claim that, quote, an African American man was threatening me. Christian captured the incident on video, and of course, if you recall, it went viral. This was around the time of George Floyd. And Christian says, I knew something like this could happen to me as a birder who is black. Now, this guy went to Harvard. He's an accomplished writer and editor. So the viral incident caught the attention of National Geographic, of all people, of all places. And it led, I should say, to the creation of his show, quote, Extraordinary Birder, which premiered last year. The show has since gained critical acclaim, and it culminated in him winning the Daytime Emmy Award for Outstanding Daytime Personality. He says, no matter what anybody says or does, we are not going back. We will only move forward together. Wow. So this run-in with Karen has turned out. I mean, nobody hears from Amy Cooper anymore. That Karen is done, signed, sealed, delivered. Well, this guy has now wrote a best-selling book, Better Living Through Birding: Notes from a Black Man in the Natural World, and now has an Emmy Award to show for it. Power 96 says it's a great success story, but I would have knocked the mayonnaise out of Amy. Oh gosh. Mike B says she was also fired from her job, tried to sue and lost in court. So it all worked out the way it should have worked out. So congratulations, Mr. Cooper. Usually saying congratulations to Austin Cooper. Where's he in the story? How come Austin's not in this story? Does he watch birds? Does Austin do some bird watching? I don't know. I got to find out. I'm hoping to see Austin this week in Baltimore, but his schedule. He's like the president. Well, the schedule that he keeps, doesn't sleep or anything. What a guy! What a guy! David Youngblood says, "Kudos to the birder." So, folks, the National Newspaper Publishers Association's annual convention is upon us in Charm City. Them Cooper boys, I tell you. Yep. As I said, we will be at City Hall today with the mayor. They're doing some special program over there at City Hall, but Dr. Chavis will be a part of this, as well as the NMPA's chair, Bobby Henry, at City Hall today. So kicks off. It's a really nice way to kick off the convention. The Black Press is now 197 years young, almost 200 years. Almost 200 years. That says a lot, and it should get the attention, respect, et cetera, of the Biden-Harris campaign. it really should. Understanding our place, not only in history, but even today, with the power of the Black press. This guy with the very, very close election, the last thing you want to do, it seems like you and your schedulers and your campaign staff would really want to do is alienate the Black press, which in turn alienates the Black community. You see the disinformation that we have to continue to fight among our people and against Like we've named them, people like Snoop Dogg, Jay-Z, Ice Cube, Stephen A, Byron Donalds, Clarence Thomas. I mean, we go on and on. Ben Carson. So we're only a couple months away. You want to win. Get with winners. Losers never win. So like, share, subscribe to our YouTube page as we continue to try to score more and more wins. Let it be known news, and we'll see you tomorrow live from Baltimore, Maryland. Thanks for watching.